Earlier this week, I almost made an emotional decision that would have cost me literally $150,000 loss on a property that I bought. Now, it wasn't $150,000 loss in terms of what I purchased it for, but it was $150,000 loss on what I could have sold the property for a year ago. So, in this video, I'm going to explain how my emotion almost got the better of me this week, but thankfully, I've got such a good team of advisors around me and some mentors in my life and some people in my life that I can bounce ideas off to protect myself from myself and make better decisions. In 2016, I made an emotional decision for the first time in my life from a property perspective, where I bought a property that was on a smaller block with some high density stuff across the road on the water of the Sunshine Coast, and I built what I thought was going to be my longer term home that myself and my family would be living in. I spent a lot of money on that property, and at the time I honestly thought I was going to be living there for 5 or 10 years because it was close to the school and it's in a really decent area of the Sunshine Coast with a lot of long-term potential. But after living in the property for a year and Lisa falling pregnant with our third little baby, Cove, we decided that we wanted a bigger backyard, we wanted to be walking distance to the beach, and we wanted a bit of a different lifestyle. Now, that decision was completely cool, and we basically decided to sell the property we were currently living in, or that we just built a year before, to move across into the home that we now live in. But unfortunately, at that time in the market, it was just as APRA was making money really, really hard for people to access, and property prices in Sydney and Melbourne were starting to decline, and therefore we couldn't sell the property. So we made the decision that so many people do, which is to chuck a tenant in for a year or two and decide what we wanted to do after that. Now, because I'd bought the property emotionally, it didn't tick my boxes for an investment of being on a 600 square meter block. It didn't have the orientation that I like. I'd overcapitalized in terms of what I'd spent building it. I'd made it very, very us-centric as opposed to something that was nice and simple for the market, that the market would have a good appetite for. I built it in an area with lots of development going on, lots of brand new properties around us, higher density stuff across the street on a smaller block. And I also built it in a regional marketplace, probably at the wrong time of the cycle for that type of product, because the Sunshine Coast in a couple of years leading up to that had gone on a real tear, and prices had risen by about 25% in that couple of years. So, all of these are lessons, obviously, but because I thought I was going to be living there, and if I wasn't living there, I thought I'd be able to easily sell the property, it was in the back of my mind, I always had an exit strategy. But, I've now got this property that's worth, roughly $1 million that I've put a lot of my own cash into because I thought I was going to live there, that really only could rent out for $650 a week. So, that was my lesson there. And, I couldn't sell it, so I rented it out. And then about 4 months ago, we've had the one tenant in the entire time, which has been great. And then about 4 months ago, I decided to relist the property for sale. Now, at the time when I first tried to get it up for sale in 2017, my neighbors had just both sold their properties for well over $1 million. And I thought, cool, that's sort of my price expectations. I know the market's softened. Maybe I can get sort of $950,000 for mine. Now, in the first month, we had absolutely no inquiry at that price. In the second month, I dropped the price down to offers over $900K. I did get a cash offer for $870,000, which I rejected. And then another month after that, I've just dropped the price down to $850,000. Now, I didn't feel good about doing that because obviously I was effectively losing $150,000 on what I could have sold the property for a couple of years ago. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I was making an emotional decision. I wanted to get rid of the property because I wanted to use the money that was caught up in it to go and do some other stuff in the next few years. But I really sat down with my team, Crystal, my business partner, Simon, my business partner, and Adam, who's also my business partner. And we really sort of looked at the pros and cons of holding the property versus letting the property go. Now, there's a lot of people in the Sydney and Melbourne markets who have gone through similar things in the last couple of years where they've sold properties for prices that were significantly below what they could have in 2016. And this is completely common, right? Like, this is how people make money in property. But I didn't want to be that particular person. I also didn't really want to get stuck holding this property that wasn't the right investment, that I wasn't going to live in either. And so, what I've decided to do after talking with my team is rent the property back out up until the top of the next cycle, just before the next GFC, sell it out for a good price point, sell it out for a good profit, and move that money into cash at that time so I can get back into the Sydney and the Melbourne markets. But had I not had this team of people around me that can sort of sanity check my thinking and look after me, that have my best interests at heart, I could have easily sold this property this week for $150,000 loss on what I could have a couple of years ago. And I could have put myself in a position where, I was effectively losing all of the value that I created in that property and losing value moving that money across into something else. So the key lessons that I've learned personally through this experience is stick to your fundamentals. I made the mistake of buying a greenfield area, emotionally making that purchase decision. I also didn't look at the stock coming on around that area, which has ultimately affected my ability to sell this property at this time. I didn't really factor into account just how much of an effect, the government making money really hard to borrow has had on that more expensive marketplace over $1 million in Australia. And it's still really having an effect because there's just less buyers in that space than there were a few years ago. I made the mistake of buying a smaller piece of land. I made the mistake of over-capitalising on the home and building something for myself. And I made the biggest mistake of choosing something that I thought was my dream home before I'd actually tried it out. And, that was a huge lesson for me. Like, I went all in on this property. I thought it was going to be the place that I was going to stay. I never saw it as an investment. And then without having a clear plan B or plan C for that property outside of selling it, which I wasn't able to do, now I'm stuck with this asset that's worth a lot, that gets really shitty rent, that probably isn't going to get amazing gains, and I've got this money tied up in this place that I can't get it out of. So huge amount of lessons. It has all still worked out. Like, I'm still going to get good rent on the property now. I've got good tax benefits on it, and I know that the markets in a couple of years time from now, 2 or 3 years time, will recover. I know that the government's doing everything it can to stir the pot, to make money cheaper, to make money easier to borrow, to reduce unemployment, to create more jobs, to build more infrastructure. I know there's a train line going in through this suburb. I know that in 5 or 6 years' time, this suburb's going to be completely finished, and therefore it's going to become a lot more valuable than it is now. But, as always, you're just constantly learning in this game. I'm so grateful that I've got people around me that can pull me up when I'm looking to make these mistakes. If you've made that sort of decision before, please put something down in the comments there, where you've made an emotional decision and made a mistake, or if you've made an emotional decision and it's worked out really well. I love reading people's stories in the community. If you haven't already done so, please give this video a thumbs up. Please subscribe to the channel, and learn from my lessons, learn from my mistakes. Cheers.